Introducing the all-new 252 electric range at Hugo Luna Motors. See our Peugeot E2008, now available in electric. This bold SUV boasts a striking design with sleek LED headlamps and a redesigned grille for a powerful presence. With zero CO2 emissions and 156 HP of power, the E2008 delivers efficiency and performance. Discover more at hugolunamotors.ie. Drive the future today.
Good evening and welcome to Encore with Zoe Ryan, my favourite hour of the day. After 80s Hour and Drive Time, of course. The news team will vouch that every week I come in just that little bit early to get into the zone ahead of the show. And how I do that is I sit there, go over my notes, whilst taking in the tracks Roy has chosen for the segment. Oh, what a decade for music, film, fashion, the list goes on. But on to present day. Tonight on Encore, Tullamore-born artist David Fox takes us on a walk and talk style tour of his marked lands exhibition in Esker Arts. Mullingar-based contemporary landscape painter Joan Mulvihill reveals the unlikely inspiration behind her latest body of work, and the Biscuit Factory's Tara Prendergast responds to those unsavoury comments recently made about the basic income for the arts scheme. But first, take a listen to this.
I did tell my 82-year-old mother, I said, "Mom, who'd have ever thought I'd have a painting in an exhibition in London with a giant Viagra tablet?" And she said, "Yes, Joan, that is surprising, but what's more surprising is that I would be happy about it." My mother's aunt is still alive. She's in her 90s, poor old Aunt Bridgie. I met Aunt Bridgie at my uncle's 80th birthday party, so rock and roll in my life. And I said, "Bridgie, did you hear the exciting news?" And she said, "What's that, Joan?" I said, "Bridgie, I have a painting in an exhibition in Mayfair in London." And she says, "Well, be the hokey, Joan, that'll have them all standing up straight." I said, "Well, Bridgie, you have no idea."
That was an excerpt from a speech made by artist Joan Mulvihill at a display of her most recent collection earlier this year. And I think it captures her character and also hints at the subject matter. She'll be joining us to talk about that a little later on. Next, capturing often overlooked art with David Fox. Midlands 103. It is Encore with Zoe Ryan on Midlands 103. Now, every now and then I like to take Encore on tour and get out of the studio and into the spaces artists are infiltrating. Earlier this week I headed down to Esker Arts to check out the Marked Lands exhibition and really got the A-class treatment, a guided tour with the artist himself.
So the exhibition is a body of work that began about 3 years ago. I was kind of subconsciously drawn to little pockets of graffiti that were scattered throughout the landscape. And so I just kind of got out and started taking photographs of urban areas mostly, with a little bit more emphasis on the graffiti itself in the surrounding environment.
Yeah. So what's your stance on graffiti? Because from the way that you've pictured it here, it looks like you think that they're enhancing the buildings that they're done on, but some people would be of the opinion that they're destroying, their vandalism.
Yeah, there's a fine line. And personally, there's a couple of tags that you'd see maybe on a wall where you'd think it's a bit far-fetched and it's a bit damaging. You know what I mean? In certain eyes, it would be vandalism, you know. But that's kind of not what I'm focusing on. I'm just focusing on how they're kind of travelling around and just putting their stamp on random places. And they're oftentimes derelict buildings, you know.
Is that where the title comes from? Marked Lands?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Marked Lands. And it was urban fingerment before this, but because I've added in a couple of rural ones and I wanted to work with that contrast between rural and urban, I called it Marked Lands because they're making their mark on the lands.
Yes.
So let me see what else. Some of them are really urban. You know, as I live in Dublin and I'm actually a part-time driving instructor as well. And I'm just always on the road. I'm a motor enthusiast, I have a motorbike, I'm just always driving around. So I always see different areas that I just strike something with me. And I'll always say, right, I'll make a mental note of that and say, right, I have to go back to that scene, you know. And they all have little stories. Like this piece here is actually James's Street in Dublin. The Lewis lines are here and everything, just the busyness. And I just found it a really striking composition, like this old kind of construction site, and then to put these kind of black painted walls to kind of block out and safe zone the area as such, because it's a construction site. My interpretation is that graffiti artists see them as blank canvases.
Yes.
You know, see them as blank canvases, and I find that really interesting. You know, even more so than the derelict buildings. Like, you know, a lot of the construction sites in Dublin, as soon as one of these kind of boundary walls, temporary walls, go up, the next day you'll come and there will be a graffiti tag on it. So it's really interesting. And then often, if it's a wall or whatever, sometimes the city council will come and paint over it.
Yes.
Just to freshen it up and get rid of the graffiti, and you come back 2 weeks later and there's graffiti all over it again. So it's this kind of revolving circle, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like graffiti artists are constantly trying to seek out platforms and, as I said, blank canvases to just to portray their stamp, you know.
Well, they're probably similar to yourself. You're looking to see the spots. As soon as they see that blank, they probably go, that's a nice spot to draw on.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, I think you were talking earlier about the kind of idea of kind of vandalism and stuff like that. I think with these kind of construction temporary walls, it kind of steps back from that, and it's a little bit more like they're temporary. You're not damaging an old structure. So I think graffiti artists really prey on these kind of platforms more so, you know.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. There's also parts of Dublin as well, like Liberty Lane and Grand Canal Docks, where it's more kind of organised street art. So I gather the artists have, you know, probably community or WhatsApp groups or Facebook groups, whatever, they're all connected. And they can agree with each other, like a 6-week slot or whatever it might be, and they'll do their pieces of street art. You know, they're really phenomenal. It's worth visiting. One or two of the pieces here will actually document it. We can go to it in a second, but that's a little bit more organised. And then you have a kind of another realm of it where it's funded and actually commissioned.
Yes.
Where gable end walls and city councils and local councils and the arts council or whoever else will get involved in it, you know. So there's kind of different levels of it. Yeah. But a lot of the street artists probably would have came from the graffiti, so there is the connection between the two, you know. Another Dublin scene, Kevin Street. So up the road from here, there's Liberty Lane, which is, if you're a graffiti or a street art enthusiast, I recommend to go to Liberty Lane, because as soon as you turn down the lane, it's just covered head to toe in like the best of renowned graffiti artists. Yeah. So that's really worth seeing. But just around the corner here, there's a little kind of white wall and a billboard, and it's kind of like a little nook, kind of hidden away from the main road, but every time I drive by this, the city council just paint over it. Okay. I mean, this is a weekly occurrence. I just find it so humorous, because I painted this painting probably 2 years ago, and I just started to realise that, oh my God, these don't last long, because obviously there's that vandalism aspect to it, where the city council will just go around randomly painting over and over and over. But there's kind of a rebellious kind of nature from the graffiti artists, where like, well, we'll just keep painting back on it, you know.
Have you ever come along and actually seen someone physically painting over it? Someone from, let's say, the council or that, repainting it white?
Absolutely, yeah. Even this one here, I actually have, yeah. When I first seen it painted over, I had that same kind of, I just started painting that, and now it's ruined. But then I was like, no, it's actually kind of cool, because I've captured that moment in it, and now it's painted over, and it will never be repeated, you know. It's not the same amount of graffiti, the same tags, they're not going to be there. Someone else might come along and have their opportunity at it, you know.
It's a changing canvas, so I suppose in a way you've documented it in the way it was when you saw it.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. And sometimes what a painter will do, as myself, if I don't like something, or something's not as successful as I would have liked it to be in my own work, I'd actually just paint over it or turn it around or something, just paint over it and start again. But it's not as lasting as this would be, because they can just keep painting over and keep painting over. I might get one or two kind of repaints on a canvas, you know.
And have any of the street artists that you've captured their work in your works, have any of them ever reached out to you about you featuring them?
Some have, yeah, not overly. I think a lot of street artists, or more so graffiti artists, like to remain anonymous, and they don't really like to come out and say, hey, so I've had some negative responses, I've had some positive responses. Negative responses were kind of looking at along the lines of plagiarism and stuff like that, which I didn't really feel I was doing. Again, you know, I'm documenting a conceptually documenting art of art.
But it's really interesting what you said there about the copyright aspect, because I wonder, and I don't know the answer, but I wonder if someone was to say, take a picture of the landscape, would they come under the same amount of scrutiny? And my thinking would probably be not. So it's strange that because you're putting it into paint, that you're being asked those questions.
Yeah, well, there's one artist in particular that did kind of went down the line of threats and stuff, but once I explained myself and I invited them to the exhibition that I had a couple of years ago, they just kind of didn't bother responding, because they kind of realised they didn't really have a leg to stand on. You know, he had a sense that I was replicating his work and selling it recently. He didn't really have an understanding of what I was doing, but yeah, I definitely think that the fact that I'm capturing the surrounding environments and the graffiti just kind of becomes part of the work, becomes the link between all the pieces, and again, just that conceptual link of I'm an artist documenting art. But it's a different world of art, it's a different realm of art. Like they're opposite environments. I make art in confines of a lonely studio space. No one ever sees my work unless it's out in the open. Whereas I'm documenting art that's out in the open, everyone gets to see. So there's kind of an envy from my side looking at. I enjoy street art. I enjoy seeing the graffiti. So like they're getting their work out there and people are seeing it, whether it's tags or whether it's more kind of developed and celebrated kind of street artists.
Would you potentially consider something that we touched on earlier, was where you're saying that now sometimes when you revisit these sites that you captured at whatever time it was, the graffiti has changed or the graffiti is not there? Would you consider reinventing your own pieces? Like, for instance, painting over the graffiti that's currently in them and maybe revamping them by putting the graffiti that's now there into them, giving them a new lease of life? Or
it has cropped up for me, especially because some of them are a little bit older. And I won't lie, there's one or two that are older I actually have touched up. So that's something that I have done. But in terms of changing the graffiti on them, that really is something that I should think about. Yeah, that's a good idea. But I also like the idea of having a wall of the same scene but different times, you know?
Yes.
And so you're documenting the different graffitis from the different stages, you know? I think that's an interesting one too. But these are all food for thought, yeah.
And David will be in Esker Arts this Saturday, August 23rd at 12 noon, doing a walk and talk through the exhibition. So if you're interested in heading along to that, it is a free access event, but booking is essential and can be done through the Arts Centre. Now, speaking of free, Ireland has long been hailed as the land of saints and scholars. But why is it assumed that our creatives have taken a vow of charity and expected to carry out their work for little or nothing in comparison to other sectors? Our next topic of discussion.
Surprise yourself with the all-new 252 Suzuki range at Hugo Luna Motors. Suzuki's Japanese quality is ready to stand out and make you feel proud every time you drive. Whether it's the zippy Swift or the adventure-ready S-Cross, enjoy 0% finance, handy tech, safety features and great value as standard, all wrapped in the fun and efficiency of a hybrid. The only tough part? Choosing which car to drive. Visit hugolunamotors.ie today, where we're not just different, we're good different. Finance subject to status, terms and conditions apply.
Midlands 103.
You are listening to Encore on Midlands 103 with Zoe Ryan. Say yes to basic income for the arts is the slogan of a graphic that has been doing the rounds on social media across the summer. It is of course referencing the Basic Income for the Arts scheme, a government-funded initiative that was introduced back in 2022, and its main objective being to help artists deal with precarious incomes and to prevent them from leaving the sector for economic reasons. In other words, it was essentially introduced to encourage and allow artists to continue working at their craft rather than being forced into taking up traditional 9-to-5 jobs and, I suppose, maintain Ireland's rich heritage of artists. It has been the topic of great discussion as of late, given it's due to be revised in the new year, and recently attracted national attention after being referred to as being increased dole to allow artists to indulge their hobbies on a national radio show. I'm joined now by Tara Prendergast, founder of the Biscuit Factory, who took to social media following the airing of that broadcast to voice her opinion on the matter. Tara, before we get on to discussing those comments, could you tell us a bit about the scheme itself?
I would love to tell you about the scheme itself. So before we go into the money side of it and what it actually means for the artist. I'd like people to think of the basic income for artists like building roads or hospitals, but instead it's building cultural infrastructure that we all use, because this isn't just about artists. This is, about enjoying music at your local pub session, the design of your favourite book cover, the festival your family goes to every summer, the panto, which will be coming up at Christmas time, and the basic income for the arts is a scheme that will support the artists that make that happen for people. So this isn't just about giving money to artists. This is about cultural infrastructure for Irish people. And to look at the numbers to date, the pilot has supported 2,000 artists. They have gotten €325 per week over a 3-year period. That's about 16,900 annually, which is less than minimum wage. So that's really interesting from an investment perspective. We worked out, well, what would it look like if 7,000 artists nationally got this funding and ability to keep creating? It's just 0.14 of Ireland's national budget. So from this perspective, when you think about how it impacts every person on this island, it's a very small percentage from our national budget.
Now, no doubt there are plenty of artists in the Midlands and indeed around the country that are currently in receipt of that payment. In your opinion, how vital is it that the payment or the equivalent continues beyond February 26 when the pilot is scheduled to end?
This is a great question, because obviously it will be life-changing for so many artists. But here's the thing, artists will always create. It's who they are. And they've been creating from a space of poverty, living well below the poverty line, and they still create. I think the question is, will they be equipped to thrive, or just left struggling in poverty? I think that's really the question. We're moving into a world, Zoe, where AI is reshaping everything. The uniquely human skills of creativity, empathy, storytelling will be more important than ever. And if we allow a sector that carries our music, our history, and we all know this in our hearts, it's our identity. We risk entering this new era without those people. They'll still be there, but will they be strong enough and confident enough to keep this going, to keep Ireland's cultural resilience where it should be? I think that's the question.
As you said, it's in creators' blood and nature to continue to do what they do. It was recognised these people can't live on the current rates that they're on. So that's why it was introduced to allow them to keep creating. I know myself that you have to be in a creative mindset in order to create. And if you have additional pressures like that, like a financial burden looming over you, that's not the right environment for you to be able to create.
Exactly. And artists, as I say, will always keep producing, but are they thriving in that production? Are they really zoned into what they can? Are they optimized? Are we supporting them for that journey? This will give them the confidence from the public, from the government, from other people to continue doing the work. Yeah. It's not going to make them filthy rich. It's not a lot of money, but the output, I think, we have to look at the output and how it affects not just the artist and what they achieve for themselves, but for our culture. And I think, I'm really focused in on what this world is going to look like in not 20 years, gang. It's 5 years. The world is changing super fast. And we have to really support this sector so we all survive it,
Something I've been seeing circulating on social media feeds over the past few months is that striking graphic that I mentioned from the National Campaign for the Arts, which boldly states yes to basic income for the arts. Tell us about that movement, and have you seen a lot of traction for it?
Yeah, I mean, these people are amazing. Like, the NCFA have worked really hard since 2009 to make BIA happen. And again, years of unpaid advocacy, submissions, political lobbying. You know, their Say Yes to Basic Income for the Arts campaign is a real reminder. This isn't just for artists. It's for every person who values culture, whether that's music at a wedding, a play in their local theatre, or a book that changed their life. And Maria Fleming and all the other members of the steering group are legends. They're working long-term strategies and really focusing on specific campaigns to support and promote the arts sector. And again, you know, they do it because they get it. They're in the arts. They see the importance of it. They really feel the value, and they're artists themselves. I'm making a note that this is all voluntary. They also have their own work, and a lot of them have several other jobs because they can't afford to keep working just as a working artist. And yet, here we go again, you know, the creatives who pull and, you know, give everything to a sector. And we saw that in COVID. Who got us through the darkest days in COVID? What sector? It was music. It was artists. It was those free workshops, those Zoom calls that got people together. I mean, we can't forget that. Like, this is a really important sector. And I think people get hooked up on all the media, you know, narratives of hobbies and indulgence and all of that. And I think it's the incorrect focus. It's a dangerous focus.
And it is something that people forget. I think they open up their phones and half the time they don't even realise the things that they're consuming. It's coming from the arts. It's coming from the entertainment world.
That's right. It's so powerful. But you know, you can't blame people either. Everyone's bombarded with so many messages, and, you know, I think the NCFA work really hard in campaigning and pushing, and I think it's up to the media, like what you're doing, Zoe, is, you know, having someone else's voice come in to frame it in a different way so people really understand that it's not just giving money to artists. That's not what this is really about. Like, it's about Irish culture. It's about our storytellers, our musicians, our makers. Like, and I really think that if we focus on that, Ireland's cultural backbone will be strong for the next AI generation that we're in. It's not coming; it's here. Like, so we have to really focus on that, I think.
Now, you took to social media to express your distaste at that feature. Why was it that you felt the need to do that?
Because I think the media has a responsibility on how they shape public perception of things, right? So, you know, calling this BIA campaign an enhanced dole for hobbies. Now, this wasn't said by the media person. It was
read out. It was someone contacted in. But the question is, should they have even broadcast it?
Exactly, and it was the one thing that was highlighted as, you know, which I thought was not only insulting to the artists. And they felt it, because I talk to thousands of artists every month, thousands, and they felt that so deeply. Were they shocked? Probably not, because this is an ongoing thing. So I think calling this an enhanced dole for hobbies is dangerous, especially on a national broadcast a channel with a huge captive audience, because, as I say, media shapes public perception. We've seen it in the US, how one-sided sound bites polarize people, and we need balance. So, you know, nobody calls sport or farming indulgent hobbies, yet both receive investment, and rightly so, without any of this narrative. So why is art no different? It's essential public infrastructure. And what's really indulgent, I believe, the indulgence is expecting artists to carry Ireland's identity while living in poverty. That's the indulgence.
Talk to me about the work you do and why you do it.
Oh, Jeannie Mac, where do I start with that one? So I've been working for over 8 years with the creative community in Ireland. I've led the Biscuit Factory, which is an online platform for supporting thousands of creators, as I said, with business mentoring and linking them together, building the community and giving them resources. And, you know, a huge part, and we've touched at it on this through this conversation, is making them believe in themselves and building their confidence, because at every touch point, people are tearing them down. And so my job over the last 8 years, and I don't even look at it like a job, it's really my passion and why I'm here, is to support them in their mindset, in their businesses, in their projects, in their dreams, and connecting them all together. So, so that's really why I do what I do, and you know, I'm working on. We were touching on AI, and you know, which is the future, and I think we need to embrace that too. And you know, I'm working deeply on developing a platform to remove barriers for creatives in Ireland and globally, but definitely Ireland is the starter, because I really believe creativity is not a luxury. It's the thread that holds people together, and artists will always create, but it's our job as a society to ensure they can create with dignity, stability and impact. And the BIA is really the first step with giving them that dignity and saying, you're amazing, like, please continue keeping us here. We need them. Like, that's why I do what I do.
Tara, if anyone's interested in knowing more about you and the work that you do, and if there's artists listening thinking, yeah, I'd love to get involved with this woman, I think that I could really benefit from the supports that you offer, where can they find out more about you?
So you can hit me over on Instagram. I'm at Biscuit Community. You can follow me over there, and my website is thebiscuitfactory.ie, and anyone can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm mostly hanging out there, so I'd love to hear from anyone that needs help. And sometimes all it is asking one or two questions to get you on the straight and narrow, and there's always help there for you.
Tara, I really appreciate you coming on to speak with me this evening about this. It's a topic that I've wanted to speak to someone about over the summer, and I just didn't land on the right person to do it justice. And then I came across your platform and I said, that's it, that's the woman who can carry this conversation. So I think it's a really important conversation for us to have, and as you say, show that other side of it, and to explain to people who maybe are hearing it going around in the headlines but don't truly understand what it is, to explain to them what it is and how important it is that it does continue on.
That's it. And I think, you know, if you want our Irish culture to be as strong as it is, I mean, I think it's a huge internationally recognised brand around Ireland. We're the saints and the scholars, we're storytellers, we're musicians, we're artists, and that carries so much weight when you travel and you go abroad. But we need to support that sector to keep that steady, because now, you know, society and the world is very fragmented. It's going into, some people say, a new dark age that we're going into, and we need to support this sector to keep us strong in that. If that's the reputation that we want to have at home and abroad, as you say, we need to support it. So Tara, thank you again for your time this evening. My pleasure. Thank you. Up next, the little blue pill that started it all. Midlands 103. We are into the final segment of Encore, and I feel privileged to be sitting across from the artist before me. Last year I was asked to speak at a technology event because of my time working as a streaming coordinator, and I remember seeing this lady across the room in a loud purple suit, and then she spoke, and I thought to myself, what an inspiration. Now, it came of no surprise to me. It actually made complete sense when I discovered she was an artist, which I wasn't expecting, because in my defence, she was there as someone who works in technology, not art. And the lady was none other than Westmeath-based but Longford-born Joan Mulvihill. Joan, thank you so much for joining me in the studio this evening.
Well, Zoe, thank you for the lovely introduction. I do like my clothes, I have to say, and I do think that they are a huge expression of ourselves, so I find great joy in them. But I have a very hybrid career. I work in tech for half of my time, and I'm an artist for the other half. And I have noticed over the last 3 or 4 years, the convergence of the two, in fact. And it's not that I use technology to paint or that I paint about technology, but more that the core skills that I need for my day job in tech are being drawn more from my artistic practice. So I've seen a very interesting convergence on the two over the last couple of years. I've been working in tech since 2009, since I was the CEO of the Irish Internet Association. And then it was to a lot of people's surprise that I was actually an artist. Now, more than yourself, I don't necessarily talk about it as such. So I first put up a painting on LinkedIn, I think around 2016 or 17 maybe. And people just said, Joan, I had no idea you painted. Have you just started? And I said, no, I've always done it. I just never mentioned it to anyone else.
Yes.
And to be fair, my parents have always said for years, you should sell them. And I'm going, who would want to buy one of my paintings? Well, it turns out all the ones that I've ever done someone has wanted to buy them. So I've been, I suppose, I hate the word successful because I don't like to equate painting and sales of painting has been a success. But it is a wonderful feeling when you create something that somebody wants.
Yes.
You know, and that's the bit that's important. The joy is by having a day job in technology and business and industry, I am very, very fortunate. So I can create art and I can create not what I feel will sell, but what is really important to me. And I use art to, I use paintings, I use art to explain ideas maybe, or to articulate thoughts that I have or ideas I have or concepts that I have or explain certain things. And I use paintings visually to represent that. And that's really interesting to me. So the fact that they sell is really, really nice. But it's not why I do it. And I'm very fortunate that I don't have to worry so much about that part.
It very much so is, as you say, it's an expression of art. Like I know when I first discovered that you were in fact an artist, you said to me, you're like, I'm not the best painter. I just kind of express myself in it. And they are really visual and powerful expressions. Like, as I said there, I met you at an event, a technology event 2 years ago, went to the same event this year. And it was at that event you were asked to showcase a collection of pieces that were technology related. As you said, there was a theme of technology in it. So could you talk us through that particular collection?
Okay, so that's a really kind of funny story about that collection. So there's two things. You mentioned there that I say I'm not the best painter in the world, but I use them to express. So I have this hypothesis around the differentiating between painters and artists. Mm-hmm. And you have lots of people who are wonderful painters who are also wonderful artists. But there are people who are great painters but wouldn't necessarily describe themselves as artists. And so for me, an artist is someone who is exploring a concept or an idea, and a painter is someone who is exploring the medium of paint. Mm. Now, sometimes they can appear in the same person. I am more of an artist in the sense that I am exploring concepts and ideas rather than exploring paint. Other people will use paint more effectively, for example, or more classically trained than I am. So the paintings that you referred to, their official title is called Digitalization Unplugged, Humanity Rewired. The unofficial title is Perspective of a Woman in Tech, Sometimes She's Angry. The Angry Pink Paintings, APP. There's an app for everything, as they say. So it came about last summer. There was an open call for an exhibition in Mayfair in London. And the theme of the exhibition was art in the age of AI. And as you mentioned, I work in tech. And I was in a meeting one day and we were talking about AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. And something funny, I like words also. I like to write a little bit and I like wordplay. And I realised that AGI, VR and AR, virtual reality and augmented reality, VR, AR and AGI. I said, goodness me, it's an anagram of Viagra. And I thought, oh, that's kind of funny, really, isn't it? That's where a lot of these people who are leading the AI charge are keeping their intelligence, a lot of the bro-oligarchy. And it's, designed to artificially enhance their performance, and it's loaded with male bias. So I just thought, how ironic.
How appropriate.
How appropriate, how ironic. And no more than the little blue pill that changed the world, which was the kind of tagline for Viagra at the time. This is very much that. It is this AI seen as this little blue pill, this little technology that's going to change the world. So I decided I would do a giant painting on a big pink canvas of a big blue Viagra tablet, but with the letters misspelled VRAGIAR, and with a little rocket ship falling downwards, orbiting this big blue planet. And the rocket ship, the painting is called Projectile Dysfunction in honour of Elon Musk and his need to get his little phallic rocket-shaped ship up harder and faster than anyone else, and recently joined by Jeff Bezos on his little Space Dolls mission. It was kind of a scathing response to art in the age of AI, and of course I signed the painting PFREE because respectfully to Pfizer, they're the ones who make Viagra, and I'm breaching their copyright in a way in doing a giant Viagra painting, and so I thought it was rather ironic too, because a lot of art in the age of AI is being stolen and used as the basis for training for the LLMs. So it struck me that I would sign the painting PFREE free, because obviously all art, my art, would be free in the age of AI in terms of it being stolen. So anyway, the painting got accepted into the exhibition in London, which was very exciting. And I did have to get it over to London, which was an epic feat in itself. But it was the start of a series of other paintings, some which had been in my mind for the longest time. And I'd never really gotten around to executing them. And I needed that hero painting of the Viagra one to kickstart it. Yeah. So I set aside a couple of weeks. I call it paint-ternity leave when I take 2 weeks off to paint. It's like maternity leave, but I'm going to birth some paintings. So I had a list, literally, and I never worked like this normally, but I had a list of these paintings. I had the titles, and I knew conceptually what would be on each of them. And one of them is a speech I gave in 2013 called Digital Colonialism and the Protocol of Trust. And in that speech, I had suggested that these large technology companies were essentially an oligarchy of businesses who had the power to control global groupthink, and that they could change the algorithms and we would only see what they wanted us to see. And I thought, well, actually, everything that I said in that speech did transpire. I gave that speech 2 years before anyone had heard of Cambridge Analytica. Okay. So I had this frustration for years. Somebody said to me once, Joan, you must have really bad Cassandra syndrome. So for any Swifties listening, you'll probably be more aware of Taylor Swift's Cassandra song, but for anyone else, it comes from Greek mythology, and it's basically Cassandra was gifted with being able to see the future, but cursed with no one believing her. And so I had a really strong Cassandra feeling about the ideas that I put in that paper on digital colonialism, and that no one really had been listening to me. And I was right. Everything that I had said in that speech of what could happen did transpire. So I'd always wanted to do a T-shirt or something which just says, "I told you so with love, Cassandra." And so in a day in fury last year, I had another big pink canvas, and I sat down one morning, and in pink, on a pink canvas, I transcribed every word of that speech onto a canvas. And at the very bottom in blue, in a band of blue, and I said, and here's more or less, it says, and here's when men said the same thing a couple of years later, and I bet you can read this part, because the blue part's really easy to read. And it was almost a reflection on how it may be sometimes in tech, women's voices are harder to hear, or people don't seem to be able to listen to us quite so much. So there was a frustration about that maybe if I'd been a man, people would have heard me or listened to me more. And the fact that everything I'd said was correct. So anyway, that's the big pink canvas with all of the writing on it. But then I went over it in varnish, and I did say, "I told you so with love, Cassandra XOX." And that's in varnish, so you can only see it in a certain light. So the light has to shine in a particular way. So again, it's this idea that our voices are not quite being heard. So there's 7 of those paintings. I can talk you through some more of them, but I don't want to ramble on too much.
Sure.
But it was this idea of taking some thoughts and ideas that I'd had in tech and putting them onto canvas in a very pop art kind of style. And so after the exhibition in London, the Finnish ambassador, actually, I was invited to the Finnish ambassador's residence to present the 7 paintings to an audience of the Finnish-Irish business network, and also the Irish-Japan business network. Okay. So they were all invited to the ambassador's lovely residence in Shrewsbury Road in Dublin, and for this exhibition and talk. And so they are more of an experience than they are an exhibition. You can look at the paintings individually, and they're fun and poppy, but it's when the talk goes with it, I think you get I'm using them almost like a very analog PowerPoint presentation.
100%, yeah.
And I remember walking in, I gave the talk as well at TUD in Dublin. I have a really good friend of mine actually in Mullingar was studying digital transformation and leadership in TUS, and he invited me down for their end of year graduation, I think their last day of class, and I was the guest speaker. And so Tom invited me down for that, and I remember carrying in this huge box with all these paintings going, PowerPoint presentation on a laptop is definitely has its efficiency. Like, I am carting these paintings around, and just, I should shout out to Esker Arts in Tullamore has been so supportive, and I have had to borrow a few easels from them a couple of times for this exhibition, and just they have been so kind to me, and I just wanted to take this opportunity actually just to say thank you. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that artists need support, and sometimes really practical small things like that make a world of difference.
Yeah.
They've been great. But I have toured those paintings. Someone says, where are they now? I said, they're currently in a cardboard box in my house. And they are ready to go out to wherever they're going to go on tour next. But in an ideal world, I would like to tour them a little bit more and maybe add to them. I go to an event, I said I like to write a little bit. I think you find that with a lot of artists. We're not really confined to one medium. And so I go to an event in Mayo every year called Congregation, because it's in the village of Cong, and that is where we congregate. Okay. So Galway, Mayo border. And a lot of the ideas that I've explored in those paintings are ideas that I've written about every year for my congregation piece. So to attend that conference, you just basically write a one-page post on a word. And this year's word happens to be chaos, just saying, so that's very apt.
Appropriate.
But we've talked about creativity has been the word one year, society, gosh, my mind's gone blank, reality. So there's a lot, and so a lot of those are themes that I've explored in the paintings. Yeah. So there's a kind of a corresponding little miscellany essay that goes with each painting. So I might get around to publishing those, I might not, but that's where they are. They're not what I have painted typically before that, but I really enjoyed doing them, and I think there's feature in them. And then I also like to go back to do the more contemporary landscapes that I do the rest of the time, but they're not landscapes in the traditional sense either.
Yes. We'll get onto that in a moment, but just going back to that collection, what struck me most about it was, because like that, I walked into the room, they were all displayed on the easels. Pink was the dominant colour across them. That's what tied them all in. But I just looked at them, and even though they were lovely works of art, it was when you gave that accompanying speech, that's when the depth and the power. And afterwards, I just stood there and I went, these are incredible works of art. But as you say, I know there's a certain level with art that, when they're displayed in a gallery, and people don't always have the luxury of the artist being there to talk them through it. So they take from them what they will by looking at it. But I really do think that by that accompanying speech, it just brings it to the next level.
Oh, thank you. To be honest, I do love it. I do love the fact that they stand up on their own as an attractive aesthetic painting. The Princess and the Pea one is hugely popular. Yes. I did bring them I was invited in to speak to the TY class of Loretto and Mullingar. A friend of mine was one of their teachers, and she said, you wouldn't mind coming in to talk to the girls one day? And I said, I would be absolutely thrilled. And one of the girls, as soon as I took it out of the box, she said, that's the Princess and the Pea. And I said, absolutely right. Now, to recognise it for what it is really interesting, because really it's a big pink canvas. There's a big green dot at the bottom and a crown at the top and some lines and a ladder. And it was the ladder that's not part of the story, but she instantly recognised it as the Princess and the Pea. Yeah. And for me, it was taking that concept of the Princess and the Pea and thinking about AI and this idea that utopia is not lying on 20 mattresses with nothing to do. This idea that, AI is going to free us from boring chores. We'll all be lying around doing nothing and it'll be all very chill. And utopia is not having nothing to do. Utopia is finding what you love to do and doing that. Yes. And that we need to find purpose. And actually, so there's a crown on top, that's the emblem for the princess, but the pea at the bottom, the pea maybe that is problem. Maybe that means purpose. Maybe that's the P. We need to find the problem, and then we earn the crown. And that's what the ladder is there. So it's this like kind of circular relationship between the princess and the P.
Yeah.
And that we're not princesses because we've got nothing to do. We earn our crown by finding our purpose, finding our problem and solving that and working towards it. And that's how we then move up the ladder to get the crown. So I like that, but I love the fact that those students got it straight away.
Yeah.
And I've actually had some guys I work with in tech saying, will you make a print? I'd love my daughter to have the princess and the P over her bed. Like it's a really cool way of reimagining that story for the times that we're in. Another one it's probably worth talking about, and it's the one that I suppose is the most personal. But in that original speech on digital colonialism, I mentioned the fact that just before I'd given that speech, a couple of years before that, I lost somebody. They passed away, and I was devastated. And every night and every morning I reached for my phone and I Googled their name. And I kept trying to find them, and I kept thinking, if I could just find where heaven is or where he is, then, you know, it wouldn't be that the person was gone. It would just be somewhere else. And when you come out of the crazy of that first year, that grief, and you realise that was insane. Imagine instead of turning to God or faith or soul searching or whatever it is you lean into, I had turned to Google. You know, and I'm aware, you know, I work in tech. I should surely be aware. And this has happened to me. And I thought about, you know, instead of, you know, say soul searching, I was as Google searching. And instead of turning to God or faith or spirituality in some way, I had turned to the machine. And I realized that was not serving me. And it's not serving anyone. And so there is a painting, the very last line of that speech, I talked about it in the speech, and I said the very last line says, and as for finding heaven, some things aren't on Google Maps, some things just take faith. And so there is a painting of the Google Maps, and in the search box it just says, where did you go? And I think it was less about where did he go, but where did I go? Where have we gone? Like, you know,
where do we go?
Yeah, where do we go from here? We're getting lost in this.
Joan, as I said, when I found out that you were an artist, I'd only just actually been asked to take over this show for the summer, and immediately I was like, I need to have you on Encore. So I'm so happy that we finally gotten the chance to sit down and have this conversation, and thank you for sharing with me the ideas behind your art. If there's something that we found out today, it's that sometimes people can be in other sectors like that, technology, something that you think is so far removed from art, but make it into art and be inspired for art. So thank you for sharing your work with us today. And if anybody's interested in maybe seeing that collection, is it made known anywhere, or is it a case of it travelled, you're not sure where it's going to be next, or is it available to view anywhere?
Okay, so the easiest place to view it is probably on my Instagram or my website.
Okay.
The website is a little bit out of date. The Angry Pink paintings aren't on it, but that's joanmulvihill.com, and my Instagram is at Joanie M6, Joanie M6. I don't know why it's called Joanie M6. I think it was a long time ago, but that's the best place to see it. I sometimes, I've been in exhibitions. I was in the Lewin Gallery 3 years ago for their Westmeath Artist Award. It was really fun. I do a lot of work with ArtNet DLR in Dún Laoghaire, so I've exhibited in with them a few times. I do bits and pieces, but I do have a very open house.
Okay.
And so I'm very easy to reach. So if you reach out to me on any of the socials, like LinkedIn or Instagram, and you want to come and see any, I have done an open house studio before where I finally had enough paintings and I said, right, just come to my house. And I had visitors coming through my house for 3 weekends in a row, which was really fun. Just having that chance to talk to people in a really easy setting. I have not had enough paintings because they were, it's a first world problem, but they were selling. And so I never had enough. So I think I'm finally going to get back to having enough body of work to be able to do that. And then I might do an open exhibition again. So we'll see how that goes.
I love it. That is all for me this evening. But next, it's Country Roads.